The input was sorted and strict staff. I can confidently report that the plan closely represents the wishes and requests of all stakeholder input. All programs and services listed provide strategies for continuous and safe in-person learning and serve to mitigate learning loss while also addressing the social and emotional needs of our students. Please take note that the examples provided in the plan are certainly not exhaustive and tend to be a little bit more generic in nature, allowing us some flexibility in being able to adapt and adjust as the next 2 years proceed. It's my pleasure to ask each of you for your approval to adopt the plan as it stands. Do you have any input or questions that I can answer at this time?
Mrs. Buck. I have a question. The replace outdated classroom technology that can no longer be maintained at $6 million. Can you get a little more input on?
Currently, well, goodness, it's been a little over, I think, 13 or 14 years when we updated all of the technology that currently exists in the classrooms. And it's essentially, it's the Active Inspire and smart boards that were, installed all those years ago. And really what's happening is they're getting to that point where we're having to, update them and replace them. So ultimately it would be, updating all of that technology that exists in all of our classrooms, TK through 12th grade.
And that would cover it.
Yes, and that would also include the sound system that's in each of the classrooms.
That we always seem to have
absolutely, the cameras, the overheads,
the projectors.
The projectors, right?
Excuse me.
Go ahead. I have one more question. The $3.5 million to improve the air quality of school classrooms, in addition to what we've already done, what would we be adding to that?
I think I'm going to ask Dave to answer that one.
Thank you, Dr. Adamson. So we have a number of classrooms, large-scale units, multi-zone units that need to be replaced. These are units that are very old, and the technology is very old, and they often break down. And so we'd be utilizing some of those funds to replace those units that are in desperate need of replacement.
Thank you. Mrs. Anderson?
Yeah, I have some questions. When I was reviewing what our parents and our community wanted, I thought it was really interesting that 4 out of the 7 requests were all related to the learning loss. Mm-hmm. And but yet, and we did put, we're only technically supposed to have 20, minimum of 20, but we did do more. But I was wondering, can we add more money to that and take out from technology? Just because I think this is the heart of what this is. And I really am excited about the enrichment activities. These are going to be hands-on activities for our kids to inspire them and lead them. And maybe you can also give a little bit more explanation on how this money will be divided, like per student, per school.
Definitely, yes, absolutely. So in order to make that equitable, we, will be assigning a per student amount. We'll take that $4 million divided by the number of students we have. So that way our larger schools will receive more funding, but that way it's a per student dollar amount, to each of the students, and that will extend over the two-year period. And so principals already have that opportunity to gather and collaborate with their school sites through their school site council program to really be able to get input from their community and then use that to submit and and spend the funds that they have that are assigned to them specifically. But as you said, it will be very much on hands-on materials, on activities, STEM, robotics, field trips. We're also wanting to ensure that each of our elementary schools each have a STEM science lab. Not all of them have that currently, so all of the funding will be going specifically towards that.
So I don't know if anybody else wants to move money from technology to that, but that's what that's what I would like to advocate from. And then looking at what the community wanted, I think that's representative there as well. I just don't know how the other board members feel about that.
Can I ask clarifying, do you have a dollar amount in mind or a percentage in mind?
I would think at least another $1 million over there.
Okay.
And I would just probably take it out of the extra, out of the technology fund.
Technology.
I know that's not going to solve Mr. Giordano's problem of getting everything at every school, but I really want to make sure that our students are reignited by learning and that we're really meeting our students' needs to get them excited about education again. And I mean, I know so many schools, they wish they had programs to like bring in a company to put on an after school play. My son loved his chess club that was after school in elementary. He still talks about how wonderful that was. And I think our students really want that. I really would like to see that, where they're excited about coming to school and that we're meeting their needs. And I love that the schools are going to get to collaborate with their school site councils to really decide how those dollars are spent. And, you know, maybe that school is, you know, wants to try something different, and then they can have that opportunity to really bring it. So that's kind of where I'm coming from and what I would like to see.
If I could just follow up. So if we moved money over, would we be able to, is there a way, because I don't want I don't want to have some classrooms where we have technology and some where we don't. So is there a way that we can do a little of that and maybe find money in another?
So we would look
Pocket
for
we
another
could
pocket of
move over?
money to backfill the million if we move the million from the tech over to
Yeah, because
learning
I
loss.
agree. It's important to do the hands-on, but I also, we can't have the equipment in the classroom that the teachers aren't able to use to teach the entire class. So as long as we can meet both of those needs, I'm okay with them.
We can. Mr. Giordano, do you agree with that?
I do.
Yeah,
absolutely.
okay. So I would just need to know, then if we're going to, as we have, once you take a vote on the plan, that we be voting for it with the idea of moving the $1 million from the one pot to the other.
I agree. I think one of the main things that we've heard over the last few months is everyone is very frustrated about the online programs and the apps and the putting the kids behind the computers all the time. And they've said, we want to go back to teaching. We want the teachers to teach, you know, we want engagement. And so I agree. And I think we should go that route and get the students more engaged with each other and with the teacher, not behind the computer.
Dr. Adamson, I just wanted to dovetail off of what Marilyn and Leander were asking in regards to the extra or extended funding for curriculum materials to address learning loss. Can you clarify that a little more?
Well, it's actually broken down. If you look at it specifically on page, I think it's page 5 of the actual ACER plan itself. And so, you know, the way that we've broken it down, we really, there are 2 sections involved in that. So the one is obviously it's the 4 million specifically for, you know, hands-on learning, right, and activities, which we just discussed. And then the second part of that is specifically curriculum and instruction. And that's really our ability. We're using $2.7 million there to purchase phonics materials for our elementary students. And that's specifically to help with intervention and those students who, you know, are struggling readers. We're seeing more of that as they're coming in the early grades. And then in addition to that, we're using it to purchase curriculum. It's an intervention support curriculum for math and for English language arts for our mild, moderate special educational students as well, to help with intervention for them specifically. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
I have a question in terms of the STEM labs that are indicated here. Is any of that money to support that for elementaries? Is any of that in that technology piece?
No,
No.
that'll come directly from the $4 million
that,
right.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? So as we move forward on this to take our vote, it sounds like there's an interest in moving some of that, shifting it to, yeah, okay. All right. So we have our motion and our second. Want to be sure I stated that. It was Mrs. Buck who made the motion. Mrs. Anderson seconded it. All those in favor of.
Just before we call the
yes,
vote, I just
sure,
want clarification.
Sure.
Did
Absolutely.
we have the consensus that the money is moving before we vote?
That I thought was,
Okay.
that's what I.
Okay, I
thought
just want to
heard.
make sure what
Yeah,
my
but
yay
thank you
vote
for making sure. Perfect. No problem. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and take our vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion has carried. Thank you. With our student board member, yes. All right, now we're going to go on to business and financial. We have a single item under this one. And I will start with a motion first of all, and then we'll go from there.
I'll make a motion to approve an update to the use of facilities fee table reflecting reduction in pool rates from $8 per lane to $8.50 per lane effective April 2020.
I second.
I'll give that to Mrs. I think I heard Mrs. Buck. Okay, so the motion was Mrs. Blades and the second was Mrs. Buck. And I'll turn this over to our Assistant Superintendent of Business, Mr. Giordano.
Thank you. Good evening. As discussed during the board study session earlier tonight, Cooperative Strategies has completed a full review of the district's February 2019 use of facilities fee study. The company has made adjustments and corrections to the original report and has issued a revised report dated October 2021. Based on the revisions contained in that report, staff is recommending approval of a revised fee table reflecting a reduction in the direct cost pool rates from $8 per lane to $3.50 per lane, and then a reduction in the fair rental pool rates from $12 per lane to $5.25 per lane, and that's effective April 2020. And then pending board consideration and approval, staff will reach out to each of the impacted user groups to determine whether the group prefers either to receive a full refund or a credit to their respective accounts.
I have a question. So I know, and I did ask this question, that you might be interested in. Can you tell me approximately per hour? Because it's split up by lane.
We have to go to that. And I wouldn't want to quote you for figure.
We're averaging $11.5.
That's right.
So it might be a little higher.
That's right. So if you look at the cost that we're reflecting in the revised report that was presented earlier by Cooperative Strategies, I think they showed about $350,000 in maintenance and supply costs each year, and then another about $70,000 or so roughly in operational direct costs, utility costs, also including those. And so that would be divided over the 4 years, but I can get you that.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and we have our vote to make on this. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion has carried unanimously 5-0. Okay, let's go ahead. Okay, now we have a staff presentation. And motion has carried. This I'm going to turn over to you. I'll start with you, our superintendent, Dr. Elsasser.
Thank you, President Freeman. At the request of some board members, next on our agenda is an opportunity for the board to discuss a potential lighting project for the El Dorado High School field. As a reminder, this project has come before the board for discussion 4 times over the past 15 years. I have asked Assistant Superintendent David Giordano and Director of Maintenance and Facilities Brad Runge to provide the board with the history of prior discussions on this subject, as well as a possible timeline and cost estimate should the board direct staff to continue exploring the feasibility of this project. So Mr. Giordano, I'll now turn it over to you.
Thank you again. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Brad Runge, our Director of Maintenance and Facilities, who will provide some background information and history regarding the district field lighting. Mr. Runge will also provide information on the necessary steps and a potential project timeline concerning the installation of permanent field lighting at El Dorado High School. This information has been provided in the event the board would like staff to move forward with the lighting project. And lastly, he'll share a very rough estimate in terms of the potential cost involved in a project of this scope. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Runge.
I'll start over. Good evening, President Freeman, members of the board and executive cabinet. Tonight, I will be presenting information regarding lights on the field at El Dorado High School. Topics for tonight's agendas will cover history, project outline, and an estimated project costs. Records indicated that in 2007, boosters inquired having lights installed at the practice field at El Dorado High School. However, a decision at that time moving forward with the project was not going to be approved. In 2010, part of Bond Measure A, the district approved and installed a synthetic track and practice field at El Dorado. Installation of the lights were not included as a part of the scope of work at that time, although an electrical panel and underground conduits were installed for a future lighting project if approved. In 2011, to address booster concerns regarding lighting on the field, the district made a decision to purchase 5 portable electric light towers. The 5 towers were placed on the north side of the track facing away from the homes. In 2019, El Dorado raised concerns about the coverage of the lighting on the field, which led to the district upgrading the lights on the towers from metal highlights to LEDs. In response from requests made by boosters, the district held a meeting in October of 2013 at El Dorado High School. The meeting was intended to accomplish 2 things. One, to provide a platform for the 2 groups, neighbors and boosters, to express concerns and comments. The other was to provide accurate information regarding lighting at the field. The agenda for the meeting covered the following areas: CEQA, Musco lighting, anticipated use of field lights under lit condition, and that the lighting for the field is not an approved project and funding was not available at that time. Key takeaways from that informational meeting from the 2 groups expressed were neighbor concerns with parking, noise levels, outside user groups impacting the quiet environment, and use of lights into the 9 and 10 p.m. hour. The booster clubs expressed concern around equity and safety. El Dorado is the only high school in the district that does not have permanent lights on their practice field. And boosters shared that not having lights on the practice field creates a safety concern for student athletes practicing into the evening hours. Questions have come up as to why Esperanza has permanent lights on the practice field and El Dorado does not. The lighting project at Esperanza was installed by the district, but was funded by Esperanza boosters many years ago. In 2011, part of the bond measure A, the district installed a new synthetic track and field at Esperanza. Due to the new layout of the track and field, the existing lights needed to be removed and replaced. At commencement of the project, 4 light poles needed to be replaced. A contractor funded the replacement of 2 light poles, and the district funded the remaining 2. Moving on to the project outline timeline. If the board were to approve a project, this would be the phases the project would have to follow. The first phase would be a project meeting. District meets with El Dorado administrators to discuss scope and viability of the project. The next phase would be to determine funding sources to establish a budget. After the budget is established, we would move into the design phase, which we are anticipating to take roughly 4 to 8 months. The district would hire an architect to facilitate with this process. After the design has been DSA approved, the district would move into the next phase. A project of this nature requires the district to go through the California Environmental Quality Act, referred to as CEQA. A simplified definition of CEQA is a process to disclose and minimize environmental impacts. I'm now going to provide a brief overview of the required steps of the CEQA process. Notice of preparation, also known as NOP. The first step in preparing an EIR is determining its scope, or which an impact will analyze, or impacts it will analyze. The district must send an NOP to responsible and trustee agencies, involve federal agencies, and the state clearinghouse for a 30-day public review. Once the 30-day public review has concluded, a scoping process, once a 30-day public review has concluded, a scoping process is conducted to consult anyone it believes will be concerned with a project's environmental effects. The next step would be the draft EIR. After the scoping process, the district knows, after the scoping process, the district knows which environmental issues to address in the draft EIR. The draft EIR is distributed to the state clearinghouse, responsible and trustee agencies, and any interested parties for a 45-day public review period. During the public review period, the public and affected agencies have the opportunity to comment on the draft EIR, either in writing or orally at a public meeting. The last step is preparing the final EIR. The final EIR includes the draft EIR, responses to comments made on the draft EIR, copies of the comment letters, any corrections, revisions, and additional mitigation. The project cannot move forward without the board's approval and certification of the final EIR. We anticipate this process to take 6 to 12 months. The secret process is a lengthy and extensive, which is why the district will need to hire a secret consultant. After the board certifies the final EIR, the next phase of the project would be site coordination. District would meet with site administrators at El Dorado High School to discuss possible construction timelines, as this project would impact the day-to-day operations at the school site. This is estimated to take roughly 2 to 6 months. Once the timelines have been determined, the district will start the bidding process. As required by public contract code, any new construction project over $15,000 requires a public bid. A public bid consists of advertising the project, collecting and opening bids, and awarding the bid. The bidding process will take roughly 2 months. Once the bid has been approved and awarded by the Board of Education, construction can begin. At this point in time, we are estimating the construction phase to take 6 to 8 months. As you can see, with all the variations of timeframes within each phase of this project, and if everything goes as planned, we are looking at 20 to 36 months to complete this project. The last area I'll be covering is the estimated project cost. In 2013, the Maintenance and Facilities Department provided rough estimates on what it would cost to install lights on the field. At that time, the project was estimated to cost $620,000. Again, in 2019, the district provided another rough estimate for this project to the board. The estimate included an inflation escalator formula. The 2019 estimate for this project had increased to $869,000. The numbers provided above are only rough estimates. The district will not have accurate numbers until we complete the bidding phase of this project. We would be anticipating an increase from the 2019 estimate given recent inflationary cost pressures. That concludes the presentation. If you have any questions for Mr. Giordano or myself.
Okay, thank you very much. Turning it over to board members for questions.
Question.
Go ahead, Mrs. Brown.
The 2019 estimate was just under $900,000. What do you estimate it would be for 2021? Ballpark, over $1 million?
Yeah. So in order to get a really an accurate estimate, then one of the first things that we'd have to do is develop the design for the construction project. So the architects would develop that design, and then we'd ultimately go out and bid that. That's really the best way to get an accurate assessment of what those costs would be. So we'd be into the project already. We could refine the numbers that we have here, but we would also have to bid some of these, the items that are included. So for example, when you look at the CEQA process, we'd reach out to multiple companies to discuss what that might cost, get a proposal from each of them. We'd be able to refine it. But I think the estimate that we have there for 2019, just knowing how the inflation pressures are right now with just about anything we do in the construction area, we know they'll be higher.
What funding source would this money come out of?
We would need direction from the board as to where we would take those funds.
Does it help that it's already, you said that it's already has like the lighting in it? Would that help the cost at all? Has that ever been brought up? Because it looks like it's supposed to have lights, but it was just never completed.
Yes, that would obviously help the district with cost because there's some infrastructure already established at that site.
So could we, since we already have that in place, would that could help the cost? Because it looks like we're supposed to have lights on that field and then it just did away, right?
Well,
So like the field design, it has
Yeah.
lights. So like when we talked about, we're not going to be like pulling up those lights. That we could probably just go with the same design since the field hasn't changed, is what I'm saying.
Correct. There would be some site improvements needed to place the poles, but yes, there was an electrical panel already installed and underground conduit, so we wouldn't have to tear up the synthetic field to get from one side to the other.
But Mr. Giordano or Mr. Runge, the price here and these estimates from 2013, again, 2019, those took into account, we already had that.
That's correct.
Work underground, correct? That's correct. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the infrastructure is already baked into the price, correct?
From 2013 to currently, how many injuries have we had due to lights or poor lighting on that field? Do we have an idea, an estimate? Because I'm pretty sure not too long ago, we had a student get hit by a I don't know, one of those hard lacrosse balls, and it cost the district a pretty good amount of money. So I'm just wondering if the safety for the kids are going to be worth the time that we're going to put in there, and I think it would be.
So my thought is this: is we have since 2007, we've been wanting to put in the lights. This has been 14 years, and from what I'm understanding from people from El Dorado, what they're telling me is the school was open in 1966. The houses were built around it from 1967 and 1971. This would impact boys football, boys and girls track, boys and girls lacrosse, the band, soccer for boys and girls, and the color guard. I'm assuming that it's already zoned for lights. The field is, because we have the lights there. Is that true or no?
No, so going through the CEQA process is the part of the installation of the lights. So,
and so another concern that we have is that one of it is El Dorado is the only field that doesn't have lights on their football field. So the concern is, if we're going to talk equity in our district, this is not equitable for any of the athletes at El Dorado High School that need to use that football field. Because like we're going to hit daylight savings time now. So these kids get out of school maybe at 1 or 2 o'clock. And if you have multiple teams that are sharing this field, they are restricted to only 2 to 3 hour practices, maybe a day. And you have all these teams that need to practice. So is it fair that other teams can practice till 9 o'clock at night? And in the summer times, football teams that have access to lights can practice at 7 o'clock at night in the cooler temperatures, and be able to utilize like all these extra times. And so if we're going to,
excuse me, I don't have any, please, just, this is the meeting we're having. Comments from the audience? No, thank you.
And so that's my concern, is that we have Yorba Linda High School, their football team is obviously a powerhouse. We have all these other teams that get all this extra practice, and then we limit El Dorado to only a couple hours for basically a lot of these sports that need it. And not only that too, their band, their color guard, and just coming out of this pandemic, I think we should be able to let them access a lot of extra time. I mean, just being an athlete myself, I mean, we didn't have lights on our softball field in high school, and we were restricted to, sometimes to an hour and a half practice because you couldn't see the ball. And the safety issue as well, if we are taking injuries, I mean, we get a lot of lawsuits. And so I think that this would just be the right thing to do for students, for the athletes, for the band, for everyone. And not only that too, having lights on the field, we can actually make more money, wouldn't we be able to, because we can offer expanded times for soccer teams and for teams that want to run out the field. And then I also kind of did some research as well. And they said the temporary lights right now, they're spaced incorrectly and they're not adequate for games. They are loud and diesel powered because apparently the lights that the district is providing is not adequate. So the soccer team called the Strikers, which is an outside user group of ours, has been lending us, or they've actually been paying for the diesel lights to be used by the field, just so they can try to play past and into the night. And so my thing is, I mean, I know I brought this up, but, and my dad was a football coach, so I know like the pain that these coaches go through when they want to try to practice. But I do think in the name of equity, in the name of these athletes, we need to just spend the money so they have the same amount of practice time, so they have the same access that all of our other sports teams have.
Okay. So I think we've had comments and so forth, and as far as the incidences of any injuries, I don't know that we have that available this evening. Any information you have, certainly you should, Mrs. Blaze, pass along of any things that you brought up.
I was
But,
just gonna
yes.
say,
Yes.
before we like move on with this, I think we need more research. I would really like to know, like the safety, like how many injuries, kind of do a comparison. And also I'd like to look at the funding sources because I am really concerned. We talk every day, every meeting, we talk about declining enrollment and our students leaving. And I just want to make sure that we are not going to set something in motion that in 3 years, we don't have the funding. And I don't want it to affect our students at the end of the day. And I think that this could be a really positive thing, but I also want to make sure that it's not going to be a negative down the road. So personally for me, I would like more information, about the safety concerns and about where the funding would come and how that would affect our budget, in the 2-year out, the 3-year out, etc.
Mrs. Buck.
And if I could also add, I haven't been through all of the 15 years and the 4 different times this has come up, but I have been involved in a couple of them. And I think it's incredibly important that we make sure that we're talking to the neighbors. They were very angry the last couple of times because it impacts them directly. And 10 o'clock at night, having lights come in, if there's something we can do to mitigate that, to make it available for students, but not impact the residents, that's something we definitely need to consider. It's something that we've had to consider the last couple of times. And as the CEQA comes up, that will be part of it too.
Yes, yes. So at this point, it looks like where we have is more information for the future.
So we'll gather and come back with recommendation for funding source if the board were to choose to move forward, as well as information on safety and any injuries that we can track back to the field and bring it back for further discussion at November 16th board meeting.
And also that information, I think we need to have that within the, how that stands against the injuries that we see and sustain with lighting at our other locations, because injuries happen in sports. So I understand that too.
And I kind of like to see what our we have had claims and what does that come out to and compare it to other schools. I just want to make sure we have a really good understanding of this situation before we move forward.
Yes, and I think the point of making sure that those that would be in the area there would have clear awareness of future discussions as we would explore this further. So, okay, is that where we're at then? I don't think we'd have it that soon, would we? November.
It's November 16th, so I'll do what we can to bring it back for November
Okay, and
16th.
so then we need to make sure that the community is aware of it, that
Okay.
is adjacent. Okay. Good. All right, so back to the agenda. So our next item is a board discussion, and this has to do with potential action to prohibit teaching of critical race theory. And so at this point, I'm going to turn that over to our superintendent at this time.
Okay, thank you. At the request of some board members, next on our agenda is an opportunity for the board to engage in a discussion about taking potential action to prohibit the teaching of critical race theory. Should a consensus to move forward with such an action be reached, I'm requesting a specific definition or explanation on the concept of CRT that the board would not like taught, as well as anything else you would like to see included in such a statement or a resolution, so that staff can then take your feedback back and create a draft that you could consider at the November 16th board meeting. So with that, President Freeman, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, I will open it up for discussion. I also want to point out that per our bylaws, we're approaching 10:30, which is at the time that we consider whether or not we will continue past 11 p.m. keep that in mind for tonight's discussion because we still have the rest of our agenda. And I think it's just really incumbent that we don't disenfranchise those present, those that unfortunately have had to leave. And I want to be sure that we're all functioning at our best as we get later into the night. So with that, I'll open it for discussion.
Okay, I'll go ahead and start this off, President Freeman. Okay, so I was asked what CRT means to me, what the definition of CRT. I wrote this. CRT is a theory in which teaches people and students that your destiny in life is based upon your race or skin color. It's completely the opposite of Martin Luther King, as he said, content of character, which was the foundational idea of the civil rights movement. CRT believes more about complete separation from civil rights movement to create a quicker response to racial inequality. CRT teaches that minority groups need to rise up and resist the particular hierarchy of power in order to stop cultural genocide and white acculturalization. I had to look that one up. So that means assimilation, basically. CRT also uses words like systematic racism, industrial racism, cultural racism, and it overshadows the idea of individual achievements and personal goals into the so-called oppressive system that dismisses hard work and the notion of personal responsibility. This theory will also separate a class of people into the oppressed and oppressors, which is a Marxist teaching at its core. In my opinion, not only is CRT a candy-coated poison, but it also intends to deconstruct the American systems such as culture, values, history, and language in order to rebuild it to the principle of CRT. And these principles include color consciousness, cultural separation, opposition to whiteness, use of Marxism, use of deconstruction, subjective truth, and political activism. So if I had to put a school program in that I would like to see at Placentia Yorba Linda, I should say the things I would not like to see in these programs that we would put together in our ethnic studies. It would be anything targeting whiteness, the term or terms of white privilege or white fragility, stereotyping or scapegoating groups because of race, polarizing people, groups into oppressors or oppressed. Now, these things I would like to see in a program that we put together include exposing and ending racial injustice, encouraging multiculturalism, teaching tolerance, fostering understanding and communication, and helping students of all culture engage in learning. Thank you, President Freeman.
Thank you.
If we're just going to go down the line, then I'll go next.
Fine.
I wrote mine out because I tend to go off in different directions. So I'm going to try to stay focused. It's important we are on the same page when it comes to defining CRT. CRT was first created a little over 30 years ago in 1989 by Kimberly Crenshaw. There are aspects of CRT that I'll share tonight that bear no harm to our school system, such as valuing students' lived life's experience. What is most disturbing about CRT is the notion that America is built on racism and specifically targets white people as oppressors. The creator of this theory boldly claims discrimination exists because of stubborn endurance of the structures of white dominance. The issue with CRT does not, let me repeat, does not stem from the concept that each person has their own life experiences, and that based on culture, background, race, and identity, the lived experience differs. This is actually an obvious statement that captures that we as humans are different and unique. The issue a large number of our community takes is the concept that white people are oppressors. In doing my research, our school currently honors the unique nature of individual lived experiences through Education Code 51204.5, which was updated in 2012 to add a study of the role and contributions of both men and women, Native Americans, African Americans, Mexican Americans, Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, European Americans, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender Americans, persons with disability, and members of other ethnic and cultural groups, to the economic, political, and social development of California and the United States of America, with particular emphasis on portraying the roles of these groups in contemporary society. Given this education code, I want to be clear that we will not eliminate a representative curriculum. It is the responsibility of the board per Education Code 60040 to only adopt instructional materials that accurately portray the cultural and racial diversity of our society. This is where, as we discuss banning of CRT, it is our responsibility to ensure that we are accurate and give due diligence and support to all who are represented in our district. We need to have clear and pacing guides that outline the standards, expectations, what is to be taught, and district-approved course materials. We need to share this with our parents and have them available on our website. This will help our community to see what has in fact been board approved. I would like to see the pacing guidelines immediately developed. I will ask for the district to provide a timeline at our next board meeting for when we can expect this process to happen. In Ed Code section 51204.5, it clearly spells out that all groups are represented within our curriculum. A ban on CRT does not eliminate the lived experiences and stories of all people, including people of color. As our community has lost trust in the school system from hearing stories within our own district, like a third grade class explicit ILT being taught that white people are racist, or having a teacher say to young students, check your white privilege at the door, it is this targeted area that causes concern and why a ban on CRT needs to be immediately enacted. This type of rhetoric creates fear and mistrust. In addition, it in turn creates an environment of discrimination. How can any teacher or individual claim they know another's position of privilege without first getting to know their lived experience? I will not stand for this reverse racism in our schools. Recently, I listened to a brain researcher, Dr. Horatio Sanchez, and when he was asked his take on CRT, he gave a warning that we should not be focused on our differences because our brains are trained to then focus on these differences and can often create worsened outcomes. In addition to this, Dr. Sanchez noted that we are biologically indifferent even if we have different races. As race is a social and not biological construct, we as a board need to be mindful that we are constructing opportunities for students. We do not want to be responsible for implementing divisive curriculum. We can and will empower all students and serve all students. We will not pick and choose who gets access to high quality education and experiences. We have to acknowledge that CRT places a wedge between our students. As we construct opportunities for our students, we must do so in a way that uplifts and unites. CRT is not the method for this approach to valuing and empowering all students. As such, I am formally requesting we vote to ban CRT at the November board meeting.
Mrs. Anderson.
Hello. I wrote out my thoughts as well, and I made copies. So,
Hey, thank you.
so you can read along, you can cross out things you don't like, you can put stars by the things you do like. Copy there for Lauren. Probably need some copies over there as well. So I kind of drafted with the help of a friend, kind of a resolution, some thoughts that I saw on different resolutions. So if you want me just to read the whole thing out loud, okay. Okay, we affirm that the foundational American principles that are all people are created equal and are endowed by their creator with unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as stated in the United States Constitution. We affirm that as citizens, we need to live up to the ideals stated in the Constitution. We affirm that the Central Yorba Linda Unified School District values all students and promotes equity, respects diversity, celebrates the contributions of all, and encourages culturally relevant, respectful, and inclusive teaching practices. We also affirm that racism remains a problem in our society and needs to be addressed. We contend that racism is defined as prejudiced attitudes and or discriminatory behavior against individuals or groups on the grounds of race and can be successfully addressed as such. We contend that each individual can choose not to hold racist views and should be expected to do so, that racism is declining over time and that we can and should see one another as humans first and members of a particular race second. We deny that critical race theory and intersectionality provide the most useful tools to combat racial issues and prohibit the teaching of these concepts in PYLUSD. We expose that public education, properly designed, includes age-appropriate critical thinking about the history, philosophies, and structures which comprise the American experience, including pertinent instruction regarding the founding ideals of our nation, as well as the history of racism and inequality in America. Critical race theory derives or traces its origins from the critical theory social philosophy espoused by the Frankfurt School. Critical race theory means any theory or ideology that espouses or teaches that the United States is fundamentally or systematically racist, societal problems are created by racist or patriarchal societal structures and systems, one race is inherently or unintentionally racist or responsible for the stereotyping, scapegoating, and or oppression of another race, whether consciously or unconsciously. A person's race determines their moral character and makes them responsible for past transgressions of that race. Because of this, some people should be treated differently or discriminated against because of their race. Character traits, values, morals, and ethical codes, privileges, status, or beliefs result in a member of a race being inherently racist or inclined to oppress others. Meritocracy or traits such as work ethic or devotion to duty obligations are inherently racist. Intersectionality means any theory or ideology that exposes or teaches that the interconnected nature of social categorization such as race, class, and gender create overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. And diverse concepts are those that group people on the basis of gender, race, ethnicity, religion, color, or national origin, may attribute particularly character traits, values, privileges, or beliefs according to such groupings, and which may lead to racial stereotyping or scapegoating. And then I just put in there some other issues maybe possibly to consider, that the Board of Education adopt curriculum as the authoritative source for the content of instruction, and maybe something, you know, that applies to curriculum, subject matter, or computer programs, trainings, and subscriptions. But that might be overarching.
Could you explain the last section, particularly the first sentence where you're talking about adopted curriculum as authoritative source? Can you help me on that? What you mean by that?
So when we choose curriculum, that would be the authoritative source that our teachers and our school district uses as the main source of educating our children.
The main source, or
yes,
the singular
the authoritative.
What,
so
that's what I'm asking. Is
yeah,
it the
so
single source, or is it
it's
the primary source, but you could have
additional, and these are supplementals, but this is just, you know, these are other issues to consider. I really like the first part, and then the other part, you've got all my thoughts.
Well, and this is great because there's so much to digest. I mean, in the whole,
it's a lot.
It's deep and wide, if you will. So, okay.
I do like her part about the resolution applies to any curriculum, subject matter, computer programs, training, and or subscription. I do like that because then then the parents know that nothing in the classroom is going on that they don't know about.
Okay, let's continue down the way here. Mrs. Buck, do you have anything at this time you wanted to say?
I didn't have a lot of time. I actually had to work today and got just an hour or so to pull some things together. So I did, and I have these two definitions that I'll pass down. I only made 2 copies, but I figured I could pass it to you and you could share, Dr. Elsasser. I pulled the critical race theory definition from the American Bar Association, and I also pulled it from Britannica, critical race theory as well, and I listed both of those. The American Bar Association, I pulled that because critical race theory is a legal concept, and so I figured go to the source there. It is also the one that is quoted in the ethnic studies framework, and I wanted to also include that because that's the one that's referenced. It says the critical race theory, CRT, is a practice of interrogating race and racism in society. CRT recognizes that race is not a biological but real, but is socially constructed and socially significant. It acknowledges that racism is embedded within systems and institutions that replicate racial inequality, codified in law, embedded in structures, and woven into public policy. And that's from Janelle George, and the line is there. And I think it's important that we all agree on a specific definition. The reason I went with this is because we're talking about ethnic studies and we're talking about CRT. And I'll pass this down. I like some of the things that you put in here, specifically the first part. But I'm not crazy about the language of prohibiting CRT. I think that there's a better choice that we could use. There's other resolutions out there that talk about civic education that we could use instead. As if we choose to use language that is prohibiting CRT, we're already in contradiction to the law that requires us to develop and teach the ethnic studies course before we even begin. And that's just based on the definition of race in the ethnic studies model curriculum. We can't talk about how race has impacted history and education because it is CRT. Then we can't even teach our students about the Brown Act, Mendez versus Westminster, and other key education laws that govern our school boards and our other legislative bodies. I don't believe that we should purposely bring a resolution that is in direct violation of the law. Instead, I think we should outline what we want to be taught to our students through a civic education resolution that outlines what we want them to learn. I would also recommend a controversial issues resolution, which we could use to outline how any controversial issues are brought up and discussed. Let's see. I also added in here the definition of social justice because I know that's come up a lot of times regarding CRT and wanting to not have social justice anywhere in our district. But I wrote the definition because I thought it was important to include also. And the definition according to dictionary.com is the fair treatment of all people in a society, including respect for the rights of minorities and equitable distribution of resources among members of a community. I thought we needed to include that as well. I did list the critical race theory 6 main tenets. I think those are important if we're looking at that to include. And I think that the key principles and outcome of ethnic studies, I want to make sure that if we're putting anything in here, that we're identifying that CRT is not ethnic studies. They're separate. And the key principles and outcomes of ethnic studies, teaching and learning, such as diversity, inclusion, challenging systems of inequality, and support for civic engagement. If we love America, we should want it to be the best it can be. Rather than run from the issue of racism in America, we should confront it head on. Our kids and country will be better for it. This does not, I don't agree that that we should identify kids as oppressors and oppressed, but I think we need to talk about those two things as it relates to history. I have read the ethnic studies model curriculum. There are 3 places in the model curriculum that it talks about CRT. One is a footnote with that definition. The other is a reference talking about whose culture has capital and as it relates to how to work together as a community and love each other. And then the third part was the third time it's mentioned, it has to do with teaching with teachers and administrators, understanding and getting a better knowledge base so that they can talk to their students, not about critical race theory, but about things that happen in the United States. And I do just want to point out, as a couple of people have mentioned tonight, we have a recent incident that happened. And do you think that any of these students that were involved would have posted the things that they did if they would have had a deeper understanding? The student didn't understand that what they wrote could be seen as a racist comment, but it was offensive. What they were posting back and forth on both campuses had to do with classes and wealth, and it wasn't nice, and it was divisive. We could have done a better job at this point preventing it, just to have a discussion about race and racism ahead of time, so that our students wouldn't have gotten to that situation and posted something that was offensive that they didn't even realize wasn't offensive. And it may not have been offensive to them, but it's offensive to other people. And I think it's important that we could take into consideration how things impact other people, which is exactly what ethnic studies is about.
I was just asking where she got the information about
I don't
how
know.
the students felt.
Maybe they didn't feel bad. I'm assuming
so
that they
you're
felt bad.
assuming.
I'm
Okay.
assuming that they may have felt
Assuming.
bad.
Okay.
Excuse
So
me,
the-
I would
the
like you to
consequences-
remain
the
the
conse-
audience, not the participants. Thank you.
The consequences that those students received, I'm sure they would have rather had a conversation beforehand, not
But
to
you're just
post those
assuming,
things.
though. You're assuming,
I am,
unless you have information from the district that we don't.
I don't know, I'm not sure that it would, I would assume that a student would rather have a discussion ahead of time than suffer consequences by something that they did, if they just would have been able to have a conversation about it. So that's it for me.
Okay. All right,
Can I
well,
add to that? Yeah. Can I add to that? I know with that situation, okay. I know with that situation, it's difficult to kind of see on those sides and how people feel. Obviously, I always try to keep in mind on both sides. But I feel like the people that were involved in the situation, their character does not reflect the actions that they made. And they know that they made a mistake and they've owned up to it, and they've done vocal apologies to people that they've hurt, and they've done what they could do right now to apologize, and they know that their actions that they did was not right. But I know their intentions wasn't really to go as far as it has. And I know truly the people that were involved, their character, like I said, does not reflect the situation that happened. And I know that they wouldn't mean to hurt people the way that it has been. And again, it's, rivalries between schools and just how teenagers are. Like, kids make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. And, no one's perfect. We do this all the time. And so from what, like, as a mistake as, a high school student does, we didn't think you would get as far as it did. But I'm just standing up for them in a way where, kids do make mistakes. And I know, like, racism right now has been a really big issue, but defending them in a way where I know their character and I know that this is not what they intended to do.
I 100% agree with you. I do know one of the people that was involved, and I know her character. I would agree. Neither of them wanted to hurt anybody. And the people at Esperanza that were posting signs before, as a, that was a response of, they didn't either. And so you're a little bit proving my point that they didn't want to hurt anybody. And they found out afterwards that it did, and they wanted to, and they apologized. So to me, that sounds like either they had a forced apology or they actually meant it. And just having a conversation ahead of time may have prevented that. But I know that kids make mistakes, and they really do, and that's why we need to support them, teach them.
So I had one question before we got onto all of this. I had a question. So when you guys, the prior board, when you guys approved this ethnic studies, did I hear it right that you guys knew that there was critical race theory in the ethnic studies?
No.
No?
Currently, we have an ethnic studies class that's through Fullerton College.
Right.
And we didn't go through all of the specific detail on that. We get a general
So
approval.
when you started, so if I heard correctly, I just want to make sure. When you guys in, what was it, July or June? when you
July.
did the
I have the
resolution?
text of it right here if you
When the-
need it.
I don't need the text.
Okay.
When the ethnic studies resolution went through and you said you're going to start the ethnic studies, was the critical race theory intended to be in the ethnic studies?
I didn't really know a whole lot of critical race theory at that point. So it was about ethnic studies, about teaching our kids things about each other, things about the past, things that have impacted systems that they can understand so that that system is changed and things don't continue the way that they do. I did not search in it for critical race theory. It's a newer concept to me. So
Yeah,
I've
it's
been,
taught at college.
and it's taught at college.
Just a few remarks. It's nearing 11 o'clock. We haven't gotten to the rest of the agenda, but this is important. As far as what was said in the resolution back July 7th of 2020, this is what it said. It says, be it further resolved, the Placentia Yorba Unified School District will establish a study course entitled Ethnic Studies for the district's high schools and will continue to review our curriculum with a particular focus in this is the year 2020-21, on our entire social studies curriculum in an effort to improve many criteria, including a fair and representative inclusion of underrepresented voices. It also went on, this is the last item, be it further resolved, the Placentia Yorba Unified School District will establish a district and family task force, as well as a student task force to support actions and behaviors that match the diverse needs of our community and will continue our district-wide professional development in all areas of racial bias and injustice. So that was what was put into it at that time. My remarks are really very brief comparatively. This is, to me, a very broad, deep subject. I find it has definitely married up quite quickly with ethnic studies as far as CRT. CRT wasn't something that I was familiar with at that time either, because it is something that is not something we're teaching. It was not something that that I was familiar with. As far as some of the things I've already heard, I'm going to say that and then I'll say a few of my own remarks. I really have heard some really positive things, particularly Sean, you had some really good, I should say, Mr. Youngblood, that you've had some very good things. I liked the things that you said, what we should be doing. This is what I think is what we need to do. If we're going to make statements, let's be what we're about and what we're doing and what we hope to do. We are not teaching CRT to my knowledge. This is not something that we are doing or aspiring to do. I really like many of the things you listed. I didn't capture them all, but you had some very, very great points. Similarly, I like some of the things that you've had in what you presented us, that you handed out to us to read, going from the positive as to what we can do, what we should do, etc. I personally am not comfortable when we get into the word, the idea of using the word ban, trying to become where we, I hate to say it, but become word policemen as to what's going to be in our curriculum and so forth. We have an outstanding district. We have earned that reputation through decades because we have qualified, highly trained teachers, administrators, and others. And we also have a community to rely on who, as it said here, there was a task force idea here. We're not there yet with the curriculum. We're not there yet. And I find it, personally, I find it premature to be saying what's not going to be in there because we don't even quite know what's going to be. I think starting from what we see we need to have in there is the important direction we need to give to staff, is my opinion. I don't have, I've read a lot of things. I was in a blizzard of paper and have been for a long time on the many things that have been sent to us pertaining to articles, to many sources from varying standpoints of what CRT is and so forth, and also ethnic studies. I have not, you might say, assimilated all of that to where I can honestly say I feel that I am comfortable in saying what we're not doing CRT. I'm having a hard time getting past this. I think we need to put our focus on what we want our students to do with ethnic studies. And all I'm going to say, I guess, is this, and I did write this, and I hate to read, but I will. I'm just going to say this because it's something I've said before. The fabric of America is woven together by the stories of all of those who have made contributions to our nation. America's not one story, and I think ethnic studies would enable us to, we don't teach just one type of math. We don't teach just one type of science in our schools. And we have American history, we have world history. What we're looking at is being able to put something there that would add breadth to the educational opportunities of all of our students. And to me, and I have ancestors who fought in the American Revolution, fought in the Civil War. I've been here a long time, but I also have more recent, ancestors who've come here, but my roots go deep. And I'm just saying that I really believe that what the ambitions were of our forefathers is that we would free ourselves from tyrants, from religious oppression, and limited opportunities. And those were just some of, I think, the key reasons. And I also feel that the question is, why wouldn't we want to share the experiences of the generations, of all the generations, and all the individuals who have helped build this nation through the decades and centuries? So I think the value of adding ethnic studies, I'm talking ethnic studies and what it can be about and what our district can bring to our students, is to add that breadth of educational opportunities to our students. And I feel that's our gift to the board right now. We can design this to be what it should be. And I really feel that that's where we should start. And I think that this is something we don't achieve quickly. And moreover, that's why the curriculum development will take time to develop also to get a good product. So I'm going to just stop there. So let's circle back and say, do we have anything that has given, and we don't really have a direction here of what we can move forward with, but where are we, let me ask you this, where are we in the curriculum development stage since this, yes, for ethnic studies?
We just had our first task force meeting last week. And so that was just the initial, was an hour and a half long. And so that was really just about setting the ground rules, looking at what our purpose and goals are for the coming year. And so it's very early in the stages.
So would it be helpful for us to try as a board to start setting some the purpose of what we see ethnic study can achieve for our students? Would that be of any value?
My issue here is that we're talking about critical race theory and you're talking about ethnic studies.
And that's right, because we're not doing, are we doing CRT other than the one class? We have the single class, or we have more than one offerings? Excuse me, I will ask the room to be cleared if I need to. Go ahead.
We're not teaching CRT at all.
Right.
So
Right. I'm just saying
as
we
far as
have the link with the community college, but I'm just saying we're not, and that's ethnic studies. Right. One
through Fullerton College, correct? Yes.
through Fullerton College.
So if we're talking about ethnic studies and we're not teaching CRT, but we've seen all around this nation, and we know from parents and students who have reported that some teachers in this district, not all, some are teaching critical race theory. They are making statements that is promoting communism, which is an ed code violation of 51530.
Then we need to have that brought forward to the attention of the
Okay,
district.
we
So
have.
please supply that.
Okay, we have. So what I'm saying is that if we're not teaching critical race theory, then there should be no problem banning it. But you guys keep going back to ethnic studies. And that's the issue here. You keep talking about ethnic studies. We're talking about critical race theory, banning critical race theory so it can't be taught. And if it's not being taught, then putting a ban on it should be no issue.
Okay.
Okay. I think it's really interesting that critical race theory it's just kind of been rolling on. And I don't know if you guys have read all, but it's been, and when I say all curriculum, it's because I feel like the critical race theory is spreading into other curriculums as well. Like I have been reading a lot about the discussion up in Sacramento about math. And I don't know if you guys have heard this, but they are actually talking about getting rid of all advanced math. So in the, like in your elementary, you wouldn't have an honors math class. All kids would progress evenly until their junior year in high school. And then that would be their first opportunity to excel in math. And I think it's important to prohibit the teaching of this so that all kids can move at their own level, and everyone has their gifts. I had a son who was really gifted at math, and if he had to stay at a level, he would have been bored and drove the teacher crazy. But on the other hand, he was a horrible writer and he needed extra writing assistance. And I think all kids are like that. They all excel in some areas and then they struggle in other areas. And what I'm afraid of is CRT just kind of like blankets a lot of things, and the whole theory around this math issue is because they're saying that Black and Hispanic children are not taking these they're not reaching these higher math classes, so we need to keep everybody down. And I think that's a wrong attitude. That's a wrong question. The question should be, why are they not excelling in math? And what can we do to lift them up, not bring others down? And that's why I think it's important to ban CRT as a whole, because it's spilling out into many different areas. And and math is just one. So what's next year going to be? And that's why, and also I think it's also important, I use the word divisive, what's the word? Divisive theories and other things, because things change and evolve. It might be called critical race theory today, but what is it going to be called next year? But it's basically the same principles. And so I think we need to kind of have, definitions so that we can go back to and rely on. But I really think, that there is a separation between teaching CRT and ethnic studies. They're two different things. They're two just different disciplines, and we have to separate them. And there was a comment today, where CRT is in the law, and it's not. The law states that every school district can develop their own ethnic studies course and approve it. We do not have to use the curriculum that the state adopted as a model curriculum. We don't have to use it. And I don't think we should touch it. Just the concepts that I've seen, I think we can do better. We have a great community. It's diverse. I love it. And those things should be celebrated and educated, and we should bring in all that knowledge and power from all those groups.
And I agree with you on that. I totally agree with you. We can design our own. I totally agree. It sounds to me like we have 3 people who are interested in moving forward with something to do with CRT. So I think at this point, that's kind of where we are, as I am hearing it. Okay. Okay. Yes.
I would like to recommend, as I did a little research, there was another district that was struggling with this too with their board, and they wordsmithed it a little bit and they posted it for public comment before it came for review. I think maybe we should, once we get to a point where we've got something to post, that we do get some feedback on that before it just comes to us for a vote.
Carrie, would you think that maybe a town hall meeting might be in order?
That would be up to the superintendent and us to figure out at a different point. What I think, I was looking at posting it and being able to have people put comments.
So a survey then?
Not necessarily a survey. It's something where people can open end, write whatever they want, but so they don't necessarily have to come and stand and be exposed to everything else. And they could anybody can make comment to any of it at any time, and then we get all of those comments back.
I think the problem with that is that people can go on and write under thousands of different emails
So- so-
and from
They
other.
can go and do
I
that
mean, just
either
like-
way.
Correct.
Just like tonight, we have people that that aren't even in our district up here talking. So I mean, that's not really fair to the constituents here. If you have thousands of other people saying that they want it and logging on 20 times. I mean, I think we've heard tonight that people pretty much don't want CRT.
And, and, and,
Mr. Youngblood?
and I'm pretty sure since the public has our email address, if you have information or you have questions that you want answered, or maybe information that, you know, we're kind of overlooking, please email it to us so we can take a look at it and make an accurate decision on this whole issue.
Would possibly be the case that what's brought back to the board, will that be a finished product or needing refinement and then be posted? Do you have any idea at this time? Okay. Okay, we could bring a draft because I think we've heard a lot of ideas. So we really need to see something, I think, before we're saying this is what we're moving forward with. Does that?
Are you talking about the CRT ban
I'm
or are you talking
talking
about ethnic
about-
studies?
We're talking about the CRT, which is,
I would say let's just have a vote next month to ban CRT.
Mrs. Anderson.
I'm all good. I'm good with having 2 readings just because I want to get it right. I don't want to have to redo this.
Mhm.
And I think it's okay to take time
Mhm.
and reflect and make sure that we're getting all the concepts we want.
And
I-
that sounds good.
That's what I would, because I feel like sometimes we get stuff and it's rushed and we don't get a chance to really dive into it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a pause and making sure it's right.
And we've just begun the process anyway, as we've just learned. So we have time. So did you have something you wanted to add?
I just wanted to confirm that, you know, as Mrs. Anderson talks about math curriculum possibly changing, any of that curriculum that were to come down, any of the curriculum that we have in school currently, the board votes on that and the board approves it for the future and in the past. Thank you.
Okay, so then are we of a mind that we have our first draft? So as you've indicated, Mrs. Anderson, that we have time to, so.
I don't know what a draft is. I mean, we're banning CRT. I don't know if there is a draft. That's my issue. Like, I don't know what there is to draft.
So did you want to table the issue until the next board meeting, or did we want to make a proposal right now to
I think we should
possibly
make a
ban
proposal to ban it with
CRT?
I mean, what are
Do
we
we,
looking at?
we can't vote on something here. So the question is, do we have 3 people? Where are we as to,
I think we need to have a consensus of what the definition is. I mean, I think we've heard different views and we need to come together. And I think it's okay. I mean, we're not going to be teaching CRT tomorrow or next month.
We
And,
already are.
excuse me, please.
and I think it's okay to have a discussion. I think it's healthy, but that's just my opinion.
It's doing our due diligence. It's a process. Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, it looks like we have 3 people that would like to start with a draft of some action going forward, and we'll go with that. Okay? Okay.
So just clarification,
Yes,
it's
of
a,
course.
it's a draft to ban CRT? Is that the thing? So it's a proposal, a draft proposal.
Are we looking at a ban in this or?
Well, I would like a resolution to, prohibit the teaching of it. That's what I'm looking at. But I want to make sure that it's clearly defined and yeah, and so that we can move forward. I mean, we could say right now, we ban CRT, but then what does that mean? What are the nuts and bolts? And I think that's what we need to do, to take the time. You heard basically, I mean, a lot of things that were similar, but then there was differences. And I think that's taking, an extra month isn't gonna hurt us to make sure we get the wording right. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, I agree.
No. A draft.
A draft.
Forward.
They would work on a draft, they would bring it, we would be able to study it, make changes, if they left out, maybe they left out the word intersectionality. Like we need to put that in, you know, and things that we would like in there to make sure it's right. That's all I'm saying. I don't want to have to redo this next year, you know, or the following year. I want to make sure it's right. And I think we have a lot of ideas and putting it together.
I think I understand what you're saying, because it's CRT right now, but maybe it'll be redefined next year and get into something else, or it'll change, it'll morph into something that maybe we didn't see right now. So you're wanting to look at the definition as a whole and then make that resolution based upon that.
Yeah. And I think it should be on any divisive concept. I mean, you know, controversial issue. I think if it's a little bit more overarching that way, then, you know, who knows what they come up with, you know, in 3 years, and we're like, and everyone's up in arms, and we're like, it's pretty covered in our resolution as divisive concept. And I just think that's all I'm saying is I think we should make time and do it right.
Okay. Got it.
Sure.
So it looks like at least 3 of you want a draft resolution, the November meeting, that is prohibiting the teaching of CRT and includes a definition of what CRT is. And you'll consider that as a first reading in November. Okay. Is that my direction?
And I think it should include divisive concepts, you know, so that it's covered.
And I do like Marilyn's, that it applies to curriculum, subject matter, computer programs, training, and subscription.
Yes, Dr. Asasser, I think that's a go.
You got a great job ahead of you. Good luck.
Okay. All right. Okay. I think we're there. So, all right. Then let's move on to the rest of our agenda. Okay. It is now 11:15. The policy indicates.
After 11, you need consensus from at least 3 to be able to move on past 11.
Okay. Per policy, yes. A motion to move on past 11.
I'll make a motion to move on past 11 p.m.
A second.
Okay, I have a motion from Mrs. Blades, a second from Mr. Youngblood. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone saying nay? We all voted to continue.
We'd like to finish.
Yes, but again, I would have been a nay had we not, I urge, yes.
Could we maybe have Lauren, if she would like to leave, since
Yes,
she's at
I've
homework and
always
it's late?
let her know she's always free to leave
Thanks,
because
Lauren.
she has, as we all do, we have things we've got to get done tomorrow. Yes, we all do. Okay, so I urge all of us to think about the timeline. Staff has to return tomorrow morning. We all have things to do. I know I have a superintendent call in the morning for my next board meeting of tomorrow. So please, let's move on. Okay, we have the consent calendar. We have items 1 through 32. These are all deemed routine in nature. We do receive information ahead of time, and all of us as board members are each to reach out and get our questions answered ahead of time so that we can come prepared to vote on these as a block. Are there any items that will be held on this occasion? Hearing none. Okay, then I will take a vote to approve the consent calendar.
President Freeman, I'd like to go ahead and make the motion to approve the consent calendar.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Mr. Youngblood to approve the consent calendar, and the second is Mrs. Anderson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion has passed unanimously 5-0. Our student board member was excused so she could return home and be ready for school tomorrow. Okay. So we're at communications and board report. Again, I know we didn't do board report last time because we had to adjourn due to problems with being able to conduct our business. And so let's try if we can to be succinct so all of us can adjourn pretty soon. I'll start with Mr. Youngblood.
Okay, mine's going to be real brief. I just wanted to let you guys know I appreciated being in the parade, the Heritage Parade. I thought that was an amazing thing. The staff put on an excellent show. It was great seeing all the different bands from all over the area come together. Just truly amazing. I like the community. Placentia was out there in force. So I appreciate being allowed to go on the little school bus with you guys. So thank you again. And that finishes my report.
Thank you. Mrs. Blades.
I too had a great time at the parade. Lots of fun. And Danielle Floriano was a great bus driver. And we would love if she drove us again next year. As far as a couple things, the CSBA came out with support for Governor Newsom for his vaccine mandates. And they also came out with a letter of support for the NSBA for basically, their stance on parents are the terrorists in the school board meetings and so on and so forth. I wrote the CSBA letter about their basically over the last, their anti-cop rhetoric in a resolution. They said in this, when they were supporting the NSBA with the parents in the school board meetings and labeling them as domestic terrorists, they also blamed the police officers for, they said, I quote, "in brazen defiance of the law and their professional oath have explicitly stated they will not enforce safety mandates or restrain those whose actions willfully disrupt the meeting." And so I thought that was unacceptable. So I did write a letter and I asked once again if I could get out of the membership because the anti-police rhetoric, once again, them supporting vaccine mandates going against parental choice. And also in the past, they've also supported bills that give parents less transparency in schools. So I asked them if I could remove myself as a member because we all joined together. They told me I couldn't. And then they said that they were going to remove me from the email instead. So I wrote back and I said, no, please don't remove me from the email. So I'd like to keep getting the email so we know what you're doing and I can let my constituents know. And so they still have not been sending me emails. So I was just going to see if anybody can make maybe a phone call tomorrow, because as of right now, I kind of think they're in breach of contract if they've just taken my emails away, but they won't let me remove my membership or refund my money. I've also been looking at, I think we should start doing an invocation at the board meetings. I thought tonight was really special what Valencia, what the choir did. And I'd like to see more of that because I think it not only showcases our students, because that's what we're all here for, is the students. And also too, I just want to, I'm sure everybody knows, I oppose all the vaccine mandates for all the employees and all the kids. And I will stand with the parents, I'll stand with the teachers, I'll stand with all the employees, and I will do whatever, if it's lawsuits, whatever it is we need to do. I'm kind of curious how LA County Sheriff's Department is able to oppose the vaccine mandates and not follow the mandates for their employees. And I also do agree with the parents tonight that came up and said that they believe their students are being discriminated against, with the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. And so I do also support a non-discriminatory practice where all of our students and all of our employees are treated in the same way as far as testing and quarantine and the whole shebang. And also too, I was really happy that Dr. Elsasser looked further into it when the parents were, stating that the CDPH had said it was only recommended by them that it was quarantine and testing for the students. And so he did, take the further step to figure out, if it is a recommendation, if we can not do it. So we did find out that Dr. Chow did make it a local health order. So I would like everybody, they've been asking, who do you direct your attention to? I would direct your attention to Dr. Chow, and I'd also let the OC Board of Supervisors also know. And that's going to complete my board report.
Mrs. Anderson.
Okay, I'm going to try to make this quick. I kind of prepared a long statement to discuss some issues, but I'm going to just try to go through it quickly. But I wanted to tell everybody what I've been up to, so you don't think I'm just sitting around watching TV eating bonbons. I've attended 2 ethnic studies and CRT forums put on the OC Board of Education, and I also attended one through the Orange County Department of Ed. I attended the new manager's breakfast, State of the City, 9/11 ceremony at the American Legion in Placentia. I attended a workshop on governing in a time of chaos. That was informative. I've also completed my third course, or my second course. No, it's my second course on student learning and achievement in Master in Governance. And then I completed my third course on finance. So Mr. Giordano, I've got a lot of more information now. And this might sound really silly to you guys, but I've lived in this community pretty much my entire life. And on Saturday was my first time actually being in the Heritage Day Parade. Wow. My kids have all been in it. My husband's been in it. All my siblings have been in it. But for some reason, I've never been in it. So it was actually a big thrill for me. Not to be carrying the water on the sidelines and to be working in the park, because I've done all of that and above. So there's been a lot of good communication tonight, and I'm very relieved. And I just would like to end with an email I got from a teacher in our district. She kind of sums up my thoughts. She goes, "It's okay for us to be diverse thinkers and learners. Our children are too. It's okay to have a different goal, opinion, or desire for your child's education. It's okay not to embrace one answer as the other. We can thoughtfully listen to each other. We can model respectful discourse with our words and actions. And most importantly, we can learn from each other to unite for our babies from 5 to 18 and every age in between. Our youth need us, and they need us united in a commitment to serve them. And I'm really hoping it starts tonight." And I saw a huge improvement tonight, and I hope that it just continues with the respect, and that we respect each other's opinions and their voices, and try to be active listeners. Listen for understanding, not listen to find fault. And I think when we can listen, to be active listeners and to understand their points of views, then we can do better as a community. And thank you for a much nicer meeting tonight.
Thank you. Well, I've been busy as well. I've been traveling around visiting lots of schools, spending a couple of hours at each one, and getting to see students in action, teachers in action, things that are happening. Some of the different things that we've been approving and having questions on, I've been able to go and ask questions more about it and see it in detail. So it was good to go out and visit the schools. I visited Yorba Linda High School, Topaz, Rio Vista, Valadez, Morse, Kramer, and El Camino. I also attended the OCSBA Physical Seminar, the Placentia Walk and Roll event that was at Kramer. I was able to do a Golden Bell validation, which I hadn't ever done before, which it was nice. I got to go over to Lowell Joint and look at their special ed program. They have done a lot to connect kids to school and to make sure that our students with disabilities are front and center right with everybody else. Heritage Days Parade, my highlight was seeing the Travis Yorba combined band together march down. That takes a lot of skill, that takes a lot of work. And not only that, we have kids at 2 different schools that are blending together. So the opportunity for them to practice together was probably very limited, and they sounded fabulous. So I'm very proud of them. The Battle of the Boulevard, Saw a number of you there. It was fun to go watch that game. I actually only stayed for the first half, but it was great to see. We spent a little time on both sides to make sure it was even. The Placentia State of the City address was once again very nice to be back in person and hear about all of the great things that are happening within the city of Placentia. The new manager's breakfast was nice to be able to meet all of our new wellness specialists and admin. And it was really eye-opening to go around the room and to see and hear all of the great stories about their first experiences within our district. And Yorba Linda High School back to school night was my one of my last back to school nights that I'm going to have as a parent. It was nice to go and see all of the teachers and wander around school in that capacity. So it's been a heck of a month, and looking forward to tomorrow night at the Empowered Women in Industry.
Okay, well, I'm going to try to be really fast here because a lot of this has been touched on. I don't think we mentioned, maybe it was mentioned, the Management Symposium. That was a great opportunity also to meet so many of the ongoing administrators as well as some of the new ones. And then with that new manager's breakfast, I started filling in the gaps of people that I didn't have a chance to meet and talk with. So both those events really helped. And also at our symposium, we had a great keynote speaker. That was very great. One thing I do is ROP on behalf of our district, and just a quick touch on that. In late August, we had finally our vocational nurse graduation. We had 38 graduates. And you can only think that during COVID, this has been really hard for them. What normally would have been a certain period of time to get their clinicals done and all their other studies and so forth. It got so extended because hospitals and other facilities wouldn't accept during COVID at certain points, they wouldn't accept the students into their facilities. And so it just stretched it out. So I can only say those were very happy graduates when they finally were able to have their nurses cap and the whole thing. I also was at the OCSBA Legislative Budget Seminar and then followed that up, of course, with, I guess we stayed too long. We've got to rewrite everyone's okay, talking fast. I'll do it from memory. Everyone stand up, gyrate. Thank you. Okay. Anyway, I want to say, if you didn't know, that our own very own Carrie Buck here is now president of Orange County School Boards Association. So she's got plenty on her plate, to say the least. And also there's going to be a combined dinner meeting on the 27th of this month of OCSBA with AXA, which is the administrators. And there will be a keynote speaker from UCI. So I urge us all to be at that dinner. And it's the first dinner we've had in like forever, 2 years. Opening the school year. I'm approaching it differently. I've been at all of our sites, but briefly in most cases. I've also been to our community resource center right next to Topaz. And what I've done, which I historically do, is I go out to all the schools over the first 3 weeks and get in the front door. Sometimes I'm talking to the principal, but I'm really there to talk to the people that are right there at the front, who talk to the parents, who deal with the students, sign people in if they're just, whatever's going on. And so it's a great source of so much information actually, but also kind of, as I call it, the taking of the pulse of what's going on, how the school year is starting. Excitement to be back, some impact from some of the things that now we're finding ourselves having to do there at the school sites. Things like independent studies, some of the things that have made life a little more complex for some of the employees there. But it was great. And yes, I was in some cases in some classrooms and out on the playgrounds in some cases at some schools. But mostly I was right at the front because that's just a great way to get a sense of how we're starting the year. Woodsboro, of course I was gonna go there anyway, but then they had a flood. And I've been there twice just to kind of see how things are going. I was able to go through and actually see the whole area that was affected. And I have to commend everyone, the staff there, the students, and the families, of course, for, again, on top of COVID and everything, having to flex one more time. And in that case, we had some available space. some portables that were there and a couple of other places they could relocate. But again, everyone there should be thanked. Just real quick, State of the City, you've heard about that. The Heritage Day Parade. Again, I think it was so, it was the goosebump time when you started hearing all the bands. We haven't been able to do that. And of course, band pageant's coming up in November, and I'm just really looking forward to it. I'm just going to stop now by saying with this, I want to say thank you to Nutrition Services. There's been so much that they are now dealing with the expansion of the number of meals they're serving. I also want to say transportation. They are likewise having a lot of alterations to their schedules. They're also, as we saw, lining up the buses, taking the students from the school that are in the marching bands over to the parade, and likewise other places they'll be going. So kudos to them. And just in general, all the departments, because opening the school year is no easy feat, especially with the overlay of all the things that we continue to deal with. And with that, I'm just going to stop and end it. I know we're at a motion to adjourn, and I'm going to give Mrs. Buck the opportunity to do so.
I'd like to close tonight in memory and honor of Lori Reichel, a former third grade teacher at Rose Drive Elementary, a parent and a friend of mine. She retired early a number of years ago so she could spend time with her family, but continued to tutor numerous students throughout the district. She passed away on Sunday, surrounded by her 2 boys and her husband after a long battle with cancer. She's very loved and will be very, very missed in the community. So I want to close in honor of Lori Reichel.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. I have a motion from Mrs. Buck, a second from Mrs. Anderson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned at 11:34 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Drive
Recording stopped.